realize it's been a while since I did my last old versus new. Don't remind me. I, for one, have never seen both versions of Hunter x Hunter, wondered if anyone would even care to see a versus on Cyborg 009, and don't get me started with how many fights this caused between my friends. For this topic, I just didn't know how to address it, as Sailor Moon has so many seasons, and the Crystal versions of Super S and Stars are not even finished or released yet. In the end, I just decided to make this video anyway, since a lot of you keep asking me which version I like the most. The beloved 90s classic with exactly 200 episodes, or the newer version, though shorter but closer to the original source material. As a fellow Moonie, as you can probably tell, hi. This will not be easy, but I'm gonna go for it. Here is Anime America's old versus new of Sailor Moon and Sailor Moon Crystal. 夢の中なら言える思考回路はショート寸前今すぐ会いたいよだからシャインメイクアップ戦うよ星空をまとって新しい伝説が今ここから始まる And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Super S and Stars are not done yet for Crystal, so for this video, I will only be comparing the first 3 arcs, those being the Dark Kingdom, the Black Moon, and the Death Busters arc. I will do my best to compare each season while going over their pros and cons, and I'll do my best not to ramble too much. I mean, who am I kidding? I could talk about Sailor Moon all day. The original series for Sailor Moon started an icon to say the least. Even with the release of a new design with Sailor Moon Crystal, it's the original art still being plastered on everything from cafes to clothing. While not being similar to the original manga, we would still tune in to see what new challenges Sailor Moon would face. She and her friends would care for her baby while his mother was roasted in the hospital after being attacked by a monster they were trying to fight off. They would teach Usagi's brother the value of true friendship regardless of what his other friends are saying. They even fought against terrible omens telling Mamoru to stay away from Usagi or else she would die. These were somewhat interesting episodes teaching kids numerous lessons on education, respect, self-care, and many other things. But this is where we hit our first problem. The filler episodes. Sailor Moon turned from a fantasy tale of action and romance into... Who's that monster we're facing today? It's... that one! While some of these episodes were memorable, charming, and or hilarious, they still stretched out each season with pointless filler episodes while boring us until we get to the next plot point. Do you want to see the story progress, or do you want to see Chibi Usa befriending a dinosaur? Yeah, that actually happened. That and they would add in some extra drama just to spice up their stories. 2 of the 3 seasons didn't really handle their characters and the extra drama that well, but 1 season was the exception. Once you get past the Life Tree arc, the Black Moon arc performed better with the extra stories and development thrust upon it. You had Mamoru breaking up with Usagi in order to prevent a dark omen from killing her, and you had well-rounded villains that pulled at your heartstrings. The 4 sisters became likable characters, risking their safety to give each other the better lives they wanted, while the relationship between Diamond and Sapphire showed how they deeply cared for each other. They weren't just villains, these were misguided individuals fighting for what they believed in, only to be manipulated by a powerful source taking advantage of them. It's a much more dramatic taking compared to the manga, but I believe it was done for the better. Unlike the other 2 arcs, the Dark Kingdom arc had to shove in several episodes per transition while changing the tactics each general used to attack the Sailor Scouts. Not to mention it took forever to get to Sailor Jupiter, who made her appearance during the Zoisite chapter. This was mainly due to the added side story between Naru and Nephrite, a side story everyone loves, but I don't. Mainly because A, Senshi Ekshi Tenno forever, baby, woo! And B, it added to the poor representation of the generals. Whether they were serving Endymion or manipulated by Beryl, they were never this cheap and petty towards each other, a point we'll address in the 3rd arc. But in the case for Season 1's villains, they were just pathetic and stupid for serving a queen who never got off her butt while dishing out useless monsters one by one. I guess it was to show the value of teamwork
teamwork and friendship if you're good and how poor teamwork makes you lose, but it doesn't make these villains look that great. Not to mention, in regards to the added drama towards the end of season 1, we're given pretty sad death scenes from each of our Sailor Scouts as they're facing Beryl head on, only to have the Silver Crystal bring them back to life to live normal lives in peace without remembering anything that happened. That's fine and all if you're gonna end the series like that, but then we get to the Black Moon arc, which would star Sailor Scouts who don't even remember that they're Sailor Scouts. Whoops. Quick, better make a pointless arc to help our girls remember who they are, and don't forget the drama. How about this? What? There's a new tuxedo mask, but it's not Mamoru? What do you mean it's not Mamoru? What? It actually is Mamoru, but it's a part of his memories that was separated from him somehow? Yeah, let's just make that work. Okay, we're back on track, Ann and Alan are gone, and now we can start the Black Moon family arc. We did it, guys! Yay! Overall, season 1 was packed with useless filler episodes, weak villains, and it's all carried by character tropes repeating their traits over and over again, while starting our romantic leads as bickering twits who won't leave each other alone until they realize that they were destined for each other. Oh, Mama-chan, even though I said some mean things the other day, it's meant to be. Yeah, this is mostly fixed when season 2 comes around the corner, thankfully. But then we get to season 3. Oh boy. Season 1 got us started, season 2 made a lot of improvements, season 3 sent us back, like way back. It added pointless objectives for our villains to dish out even more monsters per episode, had villains that were flat out lucky to meet their objective towards the end, and took 2 of the coolest Sailor Scouts and turned them into complete bitches. Uranus and Neptune were too unlikable compared to the manga. Sure, they felt that they had to get their hands dirty just to take out the enemy, but to turn down the other scouts because we will kill the enemy and may let innocent people die, unlike you children. Good for you there, Uranus. Not to mention that Uranus does the dumbest thing by taking Usagi's crystal because she would only get in the way. Yeah, how did that turn out for the both of you? Oh, look at that. The one person you thought would get in your way saved your sorry asses. But you still won't work with her because she's the childish one. Character development. And as we pointed out in top 10 incompetent villains in anime, the Witches 5 are ridiculous. They were all backstabbing bitches because they all wanted Dr. Senpai's attention. They could have been more of a threat and challenging if they had just worked together, but no. Screw teamwork, I want all the attention and fame. And even when Mistress 9 has been resurrected, she just kills Kaori Knight after all that she did for them. So with all that said, is there anything I like from this season? Well, it has to be the relationship between Dr. Tomoe and Hotaru. The only improvement to this arc was turning Dr. Tomoe from a typical mad scientist experimenting on his daughter into a sympathetic father trying to save his daughter while being possessed at the same time. It's a trait that's carried over from season 2 as we make the villains more fleshed out, but why give him the better character arc while worsening the others? Even with its dark tone and epic music, season 3 was just an overall mess compared to the other two. And while I've mostly pointed out the flaws the original series had, I still see it as a great anime series from the 90s. The art and animation were unforgettable, the music was amazingly catchy, and the overall stories were interesting. With all of that, how does Crystal compare as it tries to recreate the original story from the manga? Alright, to start off this segment, let's address the major complaints everyone points out. The story goes by too fast. Even if the original series had too many filler episodes stretching out the plot, the pacing in this series was very fast. Some say it matches the pace in the manga, which gave us a lot of exposition with very few chapters, but if you're going to recreate a classic, you have to pace it out right. Still, it really wasn't fair only to give 26 episodes to cover the first 2 arcs. We would love to see a more fleshed out series with better care towards the story and pacing issues, but I guess the studio in charge of the series just didn't want to shell out too many episodes for one of Japan's biggest icons. For heaven's sakes, people, she's one of the official mascots for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. As for the characters, compared to the previous troped up personas of the past, some of these characters come off flat and boring, and they're somewhat right. Because of the series' pacing issues, we're not given enough time to flesh out these characters, mostly concerning Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Venus. So I guess the main question is, which would you prefer? Stereotyped characters doing their same shtick every season, or bland characters that are not that annoying, but also not that interesting? As for the animation, it can't compare to the original, as it had a style that really couldn't be replicated. At the same time, however, you can't be super flashy and pristine while also being cheap, and what is that? What is that? Seriously. There are obvious shortcuts that everyone noticed and ridiculed to no end, to which I can't blame them. Again, this is a retelling of a classic anime character, and you're going to be cheap, short, and lazy? What kind of fans do you take us for? We're celebrating 20 years of Sailor Moon. We want something good. Maybe we're spoiled with how much care and attention went into the original series, as it just kept getting bigger and better with every season. But then we get to Crystal Season 3, and thankfully, they listened to us. They got rid of the CG transformation scenes, and there was a lot more care put into each scene. This only gives me more hope for the future movies, and seriously, I can't wait. But with all of that said, I will get to the positives. The villains for season 1 and 3 are done so much better. Not only were they more focused and cooperative, but they were fleshed out even more. Between the two of them, the Dark Kingdom arc had the better villains. You learn a lot more about Beryl and her real intentions for ruining the Silver Millennium, and we get much more interesting stories with the generals. They were once fighting for Prince Endymion and were struggling to be free from Beryl's grasp. And while it is a bit sappy to give every scout a husbando, which is why this happened, god damn it, it was still a lot more interesting than what we got from the first series. They weren't just mindless minions who tried to backstab each other. They were a band of brothers being controlled against their will, and you felt so sorry for them. As for the season 3 villains, they were an even bigger threat, since they acted like a heartless cult, which is exactly what they were. I mean, come on, original series, what happened? Even if Dr. Tomoe was still a boring mad scientist who probably would have experimented on his daughter with or without aliens, the villains were still a much bigger threat, since they were all focused and on the same page. This is a transition that's supposed to happen with every new season and every new threat. The scouts get stronger and smarter, so the villains had to match or excel in order to be a threat, unlike with how badly they regress in the original series. But then as we look back on season 2 for Crystal, okay, the original series spoiled me. I mean, can you blame me? There was so much heartbreaking drama and tension between these characters that made you want Sailor Moon to save everybody. Here, they're just a boring rebellion that had the 4 sisters die instantly, to the point where we really couldn't give a damn about them, and just kept them as a generic threat for our heroes to face without really caring about their intentions. On the plus side though, at least they added a little bit of humanity with Diamond, unlike in the manga, as he tries to help Sailor Moon towards the end. But that moment still doesn't compare to the original, where we actually felt sorry for them. There's scenes where Sailor Moon is actually crying for them, as each of them find out horrifically that they were being used, only for Crystal to give us a watered down version of that. Wait, you helped us take down Crystal Tokyo only to use us for your own evil plans? Oh my god, no way!
No way.
And while everyone says the characters are much more dull compared to the original, I would argue that the chemistry between the characters is done much better, especially when you compare the relationships between Usagi and Maru, and when Uranus and Neptune make their way into the story. When it comes to our romantic lead, well, when you have an amazing forbidden romance in their past life, do you really want to see their love reborn into a bickering duo constantly fighting until they remember who they were? Or the couple trying to figure out who they are and why they somehow remember each other? Case in point, the start of their relationship is done much better in Crystal, and is carried out with more passion and care for each other compared to the original series. I mean, once they remember each other in the original, their relationship is really cute and sweetly romantic at times, especially in season 2. My love's trapped in another castle by some bastard trying to steal her from me. Hang glider, ho! Can't get more romantic than rescue by hang glider. Look at this. That's ridiculously cute. But in comparison, Crystal's version of this iconic couple was fleshed out better in terms of how they met, how they got to know each other, and how they passionately love each other. But if there's one thing I wish they took out from this series that was in the manga and kinda in the original series, he's your goddamn father, Chibiusa! What the hell is wrong with you? I made a video addressing the Oni-chan fetish a while back, but do I seriously have to bring up parental love? I don't wanna. And then we have the amazing character redos for the Outer Scouts: Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and my favorite girl, Saturn. While again, people point out how bland the Inner Scouts are, I think the Outer Scouts are so much better in Crystal. They're not bitchy, they're not acting like emos, knowing that they'll get blood on their hands while looking down on the others. Yeah, they're the childish ones, right? These are much better characters. Granted, I think Neptune could have had a little bit more time to flesh out her personality, but I love what they did with the other girls. Uranus knows that she has a job to fulfill and thinks that the others can't do it because they don't want to kill an innocent life, but at least she's not being a complete bitch over it. Plus, you can tell with her painful expressions and earnest words that she wants to fight alongside Sailor Moon. Just look at how happy she is when she gets the chance to protect her in a group mission. She's just so happy to be away from her post out in deep space and close to her beloved princess. While I don't like how Pluto magically gets reincarnated after the second season for the plot's convenience, it's at least explained better than what they did with the original series. I'll sacrifice myself so you two can live and save the world. Don't question how I'll get back in season 5 though, since frankly, I won't know how I did it either. But I like the added touches to her hobbies and traits, unlike the original series. I mean, we know Uranus was a race car driver and Neptune was a violinist, but what do we know about Pluto in the original series? She wears purple. That's it. In Crystal, she's actually a student in the science department, and you know what? That's a little added touch. It's pretty cool. And while I said the relationship between Hotaru and Dr. Tomoe was done better in the original series, I believe as a character, Hotaru is a lot better in Crystal. We don't just see a weak and timid girl possessed by an evil entity. We see a girl struggling for her independence despite having a body that's practically dying. Oh, it's not just an alien possession weakening her. She's struggling to survive from injuries she endured as a child, while her father makes constant adjustments to her cyborg body. Not to mention that despite the pain that she's going through and losing her will to live, given her abusive past and bleak future, you see her fight for the only thing left in this world that gave a damn about her. With Mistress 9 stealing Chibiusa's crystal and spirit, you see Hotaru fighting to make sure her friend doesn't die while she's slowly deteriorating. Damn, girl, there's a reason why she's my favorite scout. And speaking of which, Sailor Saturn is a lot more interesting in Crystal. We barely get to know her in the original series as she awakens at the very last second, but here she's given more time and backstory. You definitely see a goddess of death and rebirth with how she handles her duty. There's describing what she can do, and then there's actually seeing it. We actually get to see her attack Death and Rebirth's revolution, while also seeing her take that gigantic entity consuming the world and tossing it out of their world while sacrificing herself. This entire ending sequence for Crystal Season 3 was so epic, and I could watch it over and over again. Alright, now with all that said, which one is better? The first series that had memorable characters, music, and art while also having an overly stretched out story with bad villains? Or Crystal that had bad animation and poor pacing, but much better villains and a better chemistry between all of the characters? After giving it a lot of thought, the better series, in my honest opinion, is okay, I honestly have to split my decision per season, as I believe some seasons outperform the other. For the Dark Kingdom arc, I have to give this to Crystal. Yes, I know the animation is bad, the pacing is awkward, and the Inner Scouts are pretty boring compared to the first series, but I find myself skipping a bunch of episodes just to get to the more interesting scenes. There's just too much pointless fluff just to stretch out the story, which can be fine if done right. But how can you give so much time and attention to the monsters and the cute stories while making the villains even more incompetent? The villains were much more fleshed out and interesting, and the romance between Usagi and Mamoru made more sense to me in Crystal. There was more focus and attention on the points that mattered, rather than making things up just to stretch the story. As for the Black Moon arc, I have to give this to the original. When I say stretching out the story for fluff has to be done right, this is doing it right. There was more focus on the drama between Usagi and Mamoru while also making the villains even more interesting than the original manga. You felt more for these characters and actually had empathy for the villains even though they were led to destroy in the future. It's taking something kinda good from the manga and making it a lot better. But the rushed pace for Crystal and keeping the villains boring couldn't hold a candle to the original series. Referring back to my previous rant as if I have to say this, for the Deathbusters arc, I have to give it to Crystal. Season 3 of Crystal had to be the best season for this series. The story was dark, the characters were written and developed better, and the villains were seriously threatening. Not to mention in Crystal, Mistress 9 didn't dispose of Kaori Knight as she could still be useful. Unlike in the original series where everyone was backstabbing each other to no end. Even with only 13 episodes, this series was handled with a lot more care and thought while making Uranus and Neptune a million times better than the original series. I would still keep the original Uranus and Neptune as my personal choices for most annoying characters, if anyone remembers that video, but Crystal's version of them were much more loving to each other and friendlier to the scouts. It was just an overall better representation than what we got back then. As a huge fan of this series, I love both versions of Sailor Moon. As a critic, I have to hold back my nostalgia and see the series for what they both deliver. Both versions have their ups and downs. There isn't a perfect version of this story, even with how diehard fans hold on to the original series and the manga fans defending Crystal for being closer to the original source material. Maybe by acknowledging their achievements and faults, we can actually get a definitive version that can bring us amazing characters, diabolically threatening villains, and a well-paced story, but I highly doubt we'll ever get a version of that Sailor Moon besides what we have now. Well, I'll definitely look forward to the new movies ahead, especially Sailor Moon Stars, because damn, it's intense. But until then, I want to know what you think is the better version of Sailor Moon, the original, Crystal, or both. Let me know in the comment section what you believe is the definitive version of Sailor Moon. You don't think the audience would get too upset with my split decision, do you?
Nah, I think you explained yourself just fine.
Aw, thank you. Wait. Hey there, if you like what we do on this channel, be sure to subscribe and click on the notification bell. If you wish to support us financially, we do have a Patreon page with numerous rewards to fit your budget. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Anime America, and be sure to check out our other channel, Pop Spectrum. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned, Anime America.